Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that Yahweh thy Elohim will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 9. Yahweh shall establish thee an holy people unto himself, as he hath sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments of Yahweh thy Elohim, and walk in his ways. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 13. And Yahweh shall make thee the head, and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. If that thou hearken unto the commandments of Yahweh thy Elohim, which I command thee this day, to observe and to do them. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which he commanded thee. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 8. And thou shalt return and obey the voice of Yahweh, and do all his commandments, which I command thee this day. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 10. If thou shalt hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in this book of the law, and if thou turn unto Yahweh thy Elohim with all thine heart and with all thy soul. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 16. In that I command thee this day to love Yahweh thy Elohim, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his judgments, that thou mayest live and multiply. And Yahweh thy Elohim shall bless thee in the land whither thou goest to possess it. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 5. And Yahweh shall give them up before your face, that ye may do unto them according unto all the commandments which I have commanded you. Joshua 22, verse 5. But take diligent heed to do the commandment and the law, which Moses the servant of Yahweh charged you, to love Yahweh your Elohim, and to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, and to cleave unto him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Judges 2, verse 17. And yet they would not hearken unto their judges, but they went a-whoring after other gods, and bowed themselves unto them. They turned quickly out of the way which their fathers walked in, obeying the commandments of Yahweh, but they did not so. Judges 3, verse 4. And they were to prove Israel by them, to know whether they would hearken unto the commandments of Yahweh, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses. 1 Samuel 15, verse 11. It repented me that I had set up Saul to be king, for he is turned back from following me, and hath not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto Yahweh all night. 1 Kings 2, verse 3. And keep the charge of Yahweh thy Elohim, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes, and his commandments, and his judgments, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that thou mayest prosper in all that thou doest, and whithersoever thou turnest thyself. 1 Kings 3, verse 14. And if thou wilt walk in my ways, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as thy father David did walk, then I will lengthen thy days. 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 12. Concerning this house which thou art in building, if thou wilt walk in my statutes, and execute my judgments, and keep all my commandments to walk in them, then will I perform my word with thee, which I spake unto David thy father. 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 58. That he may incline our hearts unto him, to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his judgments, which he commanded our fathers. 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 61. Let your heart therefore be perfect with Yahweh our Elohim, to walk in his statutes, and to keep his commandments, as at this day. 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 6. But if ye shall at all turn from following me, ye or your children, and will not keep my commandments and my statutes which I have set before you, but go and serve other gods and worship them. 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 34. Howbeit I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life, for David my servant's sake, whom I chose, because he kept my commandments and my statutes. 1 Kings 11, verse 38. And it shall be, if thou wilt hearken unto all that I command thee, and wilt walk in my ways, and do that is right in my sight, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, that I will be with thee, and build thee a sure house, as I built for David, and will give Israel unto thee. 1 Kings 14, verse 8. And rent the kingdom away from the house of David, and gave it thee. And yet thou hast not been as my servant David, who kept my commandments, and who followed me with all his heart, to do that only which was right in mine eyes. 1 Kings 18, verse 18. And he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, and that ye have forsaken the commandments of Yahweh, and thou hast followed the false deity. 2 Kings 17, verse 13. Yet Yahweh testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, Turn ye from your evil ways, and keep my commandments and my statutes, according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. 2 Kings 17, verse 16. And they left all the commandments of Yahweh their Elohim, and made them molten images, even 2 calves, and made a grove, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served the false deity. 2 Kings 17, verse 19. Also Judah kept not the commandments of Yahweh their Elohim, but walked in the statutes of Israel which they made. 2 Kings 18, verse 6. For he clave to Yahweh, and departed not from following him, but kept his commandments, which Yahweh commanded Moses. 2 Kings 23, verse 3. And the king stood by a pillar, and made a covenant before Yahweh, to walk after Yahweh, and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all their heart and all their soul, to perform the words of this covenant that were written in this book. And all the people stood to the covenant.